Waiting for people. You can't do a live stream without people. So once somebody shows up, we start. Okay, we have some people. So here we go. Hey everybody, Jem Schofield here with the C47 and another episode of the weekly live stream. Let's go ahead and just start this episode by acknowledging the sponsors that make this and a lot of the stuff that I do possible. Software that I use here for these episodes is called Mimo Live, and it is developed by a company called Boinks Software. So you can go check out Mimo Live. Version 4.0 has just been released and has got some new features, though I have to admit I haven't installed it yet because I need to test it. But it's got some cool stuff, like I can do live streams from here to not only Facebook or YouTube, but both at the same time. So I'm excited about that. What else do we have? Well, AbleCine. I teach there. I do a lot of content creation for them, and they have been a long-time supporter of the C47. You have no idea how long it's been, and it's all good. AbleCine.com, RØDE microphones, and longtime supporter and sponsor. And then I'm coming to you live from MCM TV in McMinnville, Oregon, and it is a space that allows me to do this stuff. So we've got some real people here. The way this all works, by the way, is if you are involved and we are talking and all of that good stuff. So I will introduce myself. I'm Jem Schofield from the C47, and you can check out my website. Whoa, that was too early. Okay, there you go. Boom, theC47.com. The YouTube channel is youtube.com/theC47. And if you like the content that you see, the content that I create in terms of just regular videos or the live streams, please subscribe to this channel. Subscribe, because boys and girls, that's how I can continue to create free content for you guys. Topic for today is in fact NAB 2018. This is kind of a part 2, and we have a lot to talk about today because last week there wasn't really a lot of announcements. Now some stuff is starting to come out in terms of equipment and things like that. So let's just first say this is, to my knowledge, the largest single show that happens annually that focuses on the broadcast industry, video production, filmmaking. IBC is huge, but I don't think the numbers quite hit where NAB, National Association of Broadcasters show, comes in. So it fluctuates, but it's probably usually between about 90 and 110,000 people. I have been going, except for 1 year when one of my kids was born, every year for the past, this will be, I think, year 18. So I'm excited to go back and see my friends and to teach workshops and all that kind of stuff. In fact, I have 2 workshops coming up. They're both sold out now. One is high dynamic range from production to post, which I'll be co-teaching with my friend Robbie Carmen. And then I have small crew production, which is oversold. So there's going to be a lot of people in that one. It's going to be exciting. And I have tons and tons of equipment coming from different manufacturers. I'll be hanging out with my friends from News Shooter. We'll be creating some content towards the end of the show, along with these people right here, AbleCine. So that'll be a lot of fun on the last day of the show. And New Shooter is also kind of a pseudo sponsor of the C47 in its own way. It's where I primarily go to get information about the industry, and in fact I've pulled some stuff for today from their website, and just want to give them an acknowledgement for the types of articles that they produce. They're in depth. A lot of those guys are my friends, and it's all good stuff. So hey, what's up, ICE Entertainment? So the way these NAB ones go, and the way these types of ones go, is I will bring up some slides with some equipment, but it's all about conversation here. So I've got the chat open. I hope people start to make comments, ask questions. As always, general questions about the industry and small to no crew production are completely fair game. Let me just turn off some of these different slides right here. There's my ugly mug. Beard's going in for a trim today, pre-NAB. I got some, I don't really have anything there, but you know, I like to pretend I get haircuts nowadays. Back in the 80s, there was a lot of product in here, and it looked good for a few years, and that's probably all that product that made it all go away. That's Moose for you. I'm just saying, what's that, Paul Mitchell in the white can? A lot of that. So what are you going to do? All right, so let's first start with this bad boy here. In fact, I'm going to change the way that displays. Let's select it and show it, and then boom, there it is. That doesn't look good. Well, we can do strange things here. We can move things around. Let's see if we can get this to show the proper way for everybody. Some funkiness. There we go. Boom. Okay. So there, oh look, I can make it sort of like it's animating. The Gemini 5K. So this is a, I don't know if I'd say it's a new camera. It is kind of a new camera. It's really a new sensor block that RØDE is going to be shipping. And what's interesting about the Gemini 5K is it comes from a small quantity of camera systems that they had created because they need to create some cameras that were good in low light. My understanding from a friend of mine is, I think, NASA application. And they talked about this, but basically this is RØDE's answer to a dual ISO camera system. So it can be rated like a regular digital cinema camera, which, you know, I believe on this camera is going to be at 800. But you can also rate this camera completely separately at a 3200 ISO. So while RØDE cameras and the sensors that have come into their camera systems have gotten progressively better in low light, this is a huge step for them. But it should be understood that this is a 5K Super 35mm sensor. So this is not a sensor that is for 8K production. It's not a VistaVision sensor, so it's not kind of that full frame sensor that we're seeing being introduced into a lot of cameras. But Super 35 not only is a valid sensor size and format, but it's still the most prevalent by far if you're not thinking about people who are shooting on, you know, mirrorless and DSLR cameras. So for digital cinema cameras, I think, you know, 5K resolution, dual ISO, this is going to be a pretty interesting camera for us to be checking out. And it just gives people another option in the RØDE lineup. So I don't have a problem with it. I just think it's kind of interesting and something that people will be checking out at the show. Again, please, comments, questions, feedback, anything that you want to talk about. I'm going to bring up some equipment that has been announced and has been kind of, you know, covered on our good friends at New Shooter's website, newshooter.com. But there's, you know, there's other stuff to talk about here. So if you want to talk about small crew production, things like that, we can do it. So the next camera that was announced this week is the Canon C700 FF for full frame. So this is pretty interesting because they've taken essentially the form factor, the exact body that is the Canon C700, which was a Super 35, is a Super 35mm sensor-based camera, and they have created a brand new sensor. They've also had to redesign the ND filters in the camera system, and they've created a full frame version of the C700. So this is really for Canon, the first time they've gone into full frame, and it allows them to go into the market very competitively, by the way, in terms of price point. Where the Sony Venice is sitting, we have the LF from Arri, of course, which will be considered and probably will be the flagship, and even Kinfinity with their full frame cameras that are coming out this year. So we've got a lot of people coming into this market. I'm sure we'll see more, which means that that thing that you're looking at on the end of the camera system, a lens, is going to be even more of a consideration for people as we move forward. So hopefully I'll have a chance to show you guys and talk about a new series that I have been working on for ZEISS on their MILVUS super speeds that should, fingers crossed, drop by NAB. And those are cost-effective full-frame lenses that can be used, of course, for stills, but also in cinema and video production environments. You have CP3s, which are full frame, and we're seeing lots of full frame lenses coming out from different companies right now, so it's pretty exciting overall. So C700 FF full frame, so you have this 5.9K sensor, so a relatively large sensor here. It has a 17:9 DCI 4K. In terms of its, well, it's 17:9 at 5.9K, but it can, of course, also do 17:9 at DCI 4K, 4096 by 2160, UHD 3840 by 2160, that's a 16:9 aspect ratio. And then it has options within the camera, which are very interesting, where you can basically put it into crop mode. So while you have this full frame sensor, you can go into super 35mm crop mode, you can go into super 16 crop mode. It gives tremendous versatility. Are there ways to get this high-priced cameras through a business or as a consumer through some sort of payment plan? Patrick, the answer to that question is absolutely yes. While the cameras that we most associate with in terms of owner-operator cameras are cameras that start with, I would say, in the 4K realm, with cameras like the FS5 from Sony, and then move up to cameras like the EVO 1 from Panasonic, the C200 from Canon, and then we move into the next kind of just bump in terms of price point, FS7 II from Sony, C300 Mark II from Canon, and then we move up. So we go into sort of the lower end of Raven. We go into Vericam LT from Panasonic and things like that. When we get above that $20,000 mark, believe me, camera manufacturers still want you to buy their cameras, and it's not just going to be a corporation, large corporation that's going to buy them. But you will see that in all of those price brackets that most of the major manufacturers will have payment plans or programs that they're running, which generally run through resellers, where you can do usually a 0% interest for a period of time, very oftentimes for 24 months. In fact, I think Canon is running one right now on their Cinema EOS products. So you can break that down where you can get into a new camera system at a 0% interest, and that can be a good thing overall. So definitely something you should look into. If you're not going to a show like NAB, what you want to do is you want to find your most local dealer, and you want to inquire about what programs the different companies, Sony, Canon, Panasonic, whoever it is, Blackmagic is running in terms of the stuff that's going on. So hopefully that helps. And I like the questions, so keep questions coming. That's the whole point of this whole thing. Image circle is just over 41 millimeters. So 43 millimeters on the C700 full frame camera, and you can see it's almost a 6K sensor in terms of size. So this is not necessarily going to be the camera for everybody, but I will say that in a full frame digital cinema camera, this camera looks to be coming in at the most competitive price when you compare it to the Sony Venice and the Arri LF. Save for the Kinfinity or Kinaffinity, however you say it, full frame cameras will be coming out. Those will be more competitive in terms of price point. Doesn't mean we can't get into full frame without doing that. We can absolutely get into full frame by going into, of course, DSLRs and mirrorless cameras, and we'll have to see where that all goes and what new features come into newer cameras from especially companies like Sony and potentially Canon in the future. So we'll have to see what happens with things like the A7S III, which we're all assuming is going to get released at some point during this year. And the question is, from a competitive standpoint, is Sony going to take that camera and put in a 10-bit 422 codec internally? And I guess we'll have to see what happens with that. I have no information one way or the other, but when we take a look at cameras like the GH5 and the GH5S, which already have 10-bit internally to SD cards, it would be nice to see that form factor bumping up into that higher bit depth and also larger chroma sampling. So we'll see what happens with all of that kind of stuff. Any other questions, just send them over on the chat. I'm ready to answer questions. What else do we have from the show? Well, not really from the show, but really more in terms of a light that I just saw from the New Shooter site. So let's see if I can get this to come up properly. There we go. This is called the Practilite 802, and this is pretty interesting because this is sort of like half the size of a 1x1 fixture. Supposedly has similar output. It has a heatsink on the back, and again, if you want to find out more about it, you can easily just hop over to newshooter.com because they have an article talking about that light. So I have a question here from Patrick again. Is there an event like NAB somewhere in Canada? Well, there's a much smaller event that takes place in Toronto, I believe in the fall, and is it VRI, I think, maybe is the name of the company. Let me just see, VRI. It's something with a V. You probably know better than I do. They're a pretty big company. It's a V, video, Toronto. Boy, somebody else is going to have to do this work. It's video sales. Let's try video sales Toronto. You guys can't see me doing this, but I am typing video sales Toronto into a web browser. I'm looking to see what there is, and geez, I don't know. I'll have to find that at another time, but there is one show which is kind of a mini NAB that happens in Toronto, and if anybody remembers the name of that reseller, please let me know. Vistech, thank you. Thank you, Jacques. So there we go. It's Vistech's show, and it happens, if I can remember correctly, I've worked the show and I can't even remember. It happens in the fall of every year, and it happens in downtown. And if you're lucky, there's going to be a game going on, so there's hordes of people there, not at the show, but in downtown. Just saying. Okay, so here we go. Next thing. This one's interesting. So Wooden Camera makes a lot of camera accessories. They now have announced a new follow focus system. It's called the Zip Focus. It is a single rod based follow focus system and comes in at under, you can thank Patrick Jacques for remembering the name of the company, Vistech. So there you go. So the Zip Focus is a single, basically rod-based system that you can see here, and it is kind of cool. I like it, And maybe I can get my head out of the way here by just doing that, so you guys don't have to see my giant head in the background. And so you can see here. So I guess the thing for me is it's at the right price point. It's under $500 US. I like the way this thing looks. I think it looks svelte. Am I allowed to say that? Yes, I am. And the big question is, does it have a lot of play? If it has 0 to no play, then I think this is going to be a great option for some people. This I could really see using with something like ZEISS's lens gears, which, you know, I like to use on cameras, and I think this could be a good thing to have sitting in the kit. So kind of excited about that. Now, here's another one that kind of interesting, and we can have a conversation about this. We can only have a conversation, though, if you actually converse. Okay, so New Shooter, again, cool article about smartphone gimbals. Now, I don't want to get into this too in-depth. I think we've got two major players here. We have DJI with their Osmo-based system. Then we have a couple of other companies that are making some interesting options. And then we have our friends up in the Pacific Northwest, just north of me, the FreeFly Systems team. And that one that you're seeing down on the bottom, which has a very, very different form factor than the other smartphone-based gimbals, courtesy image from New Shooter. Again, this Movi, and it's a little confusing because if you've been around for a while, I think we're a little bit confused by the fact that when FreeFly announced this product, they called it the Movi. They didn't call it the Movi Lite or the Movi Junior or something like that. They just called it the Movi. And to us, the Movi is a larger gimbal-based system, you know, with different models. Of course, the 5, the 10, the 15, and then the Movi Pro. But all of those had something after them. This is obviously their entry product into the market for a lot of people to get introduced to a company that they didn't know existed, because we're talking about a $299 US product, which is designed for smartphones. So I'm excited to see how this thing performs. I'm also excited to see where DJI goes with their gimbals, and we'll have a little bit of a conversation about that in a minute related to something. I have a perfect segue there. Yeah, you know what? I'm going to perfectly segue it, and then we'll talk about the other thing as the last thing. So for me, the other big question for NAB is, what is DJI going to do, if anything? And this product here is the ZenMuse X7. It is a drone-mounted gimbal-based system. But what's most interesting about this system is the camera itself, because historically, while DJI has made a lot of gimbal-based products, and they really are viewed in the industry as a drone-based company, they're not really a company that we think of as a camera company. They're absolutely a camera company, and we have to acknowledge that they're a camera company, because if we think about it, even though they're making drones and they're making Osmos and handheld gimbals and they're making the Ronin and all that kind of stuff, they're putting cameras onto these products, and the cameras are not third-party cameras unless, of course, you were going to mount a GoPro or something like that on them. So they have been making and selling cameras for a long time, but the really interesting thing is the ZenMuse X7 is really kind of the first camera system that I took notice of where I said, oh, they're going to start to get serious about cameras now. Now, it may or may not be known by a lot of people, but DJI owns Hasselblad or Hasselblad, depending how you pronounce it. And this is not a Hasselblad or Hasselblad camera. Sorry about that. I had to take a drink of water. But it's a pretty serious camera system for video production. And what's interesting about this camera is it is a 6K, basically, camera system. It is capable of recording in a lot of different formats, and it can shoot in a 5K resolution up to ProRes 422 HQ. And it can shoot up to UHD in 4x4 XQ. So that's pretty crazy. And then it can shoot in RAW up to 6K resolution, up to 30 frames per second. High data rates, really, really interesting camera system. And this lens that you're seeing here is one of a few prime lenses that DJI is actually making themselves. So you can buy a set of lenses that are interchangeable with their proprietary lens mount. So some interesting stuff here, because right now this is designed to go onto a drone. But what if we took something like a slightly modified, shrunken down Ronin, or we took a slightly exploded version of an Osmo, and we were able to have a raw 6K digital cinema camera that's this size. Of course, we have recording, and we have to see what that solution is, but to me, this is a pretty interesting product. And man, if we could get something like a 4K Ninja Star from ATOMOS, or some equivalent type of recording format from DJI, I think we would have something very, very interesting. So let's see what happens with that company at NAB. I'm excited to see where they go. And then the last thing that I'm going to bring up before we get into general Q&A is this one right here. So let me just turn everything off so it's not so messy over here. And give me a second. Boom. Try to clean this up just a little bit. Maybe we can take this and we can increase the size of it a little. There you go. That looks a little cooler overall. Let's just see. I have a lighting wise. When do you expect? What do I expect from Digital Sputnik, Quasar Science, Hive, etc.? Okay. So before we talk about this piece of equipment that's up on the screen right now, I don't know. I expect new products from all of those companies. I cannot say whether or not I am under embargo for certain products at this time. But I do anticipate that we will see new lighting products from most of the companies that are out there. This tends to be the show that they bring out what they are kind of rolling out for the new calendar year. And then 4 to 6 weeks later, depending on how the dates fall, we have Cine Gear, and then we sort of see refined versions of those if they are not completed products. So I hope we see new products from all three of those companies and from other lighting companies. I am aware of, we're going to have new stuff. Let's just say that. So we've got about a week or so to wait. We'll see new stuff coming up in terms of some announcements before the show itself on newshooter.com. So check the website out for that. But this one right here is still sort of a little bit under the radar. This is a company called Lettuce, and if you have been around for a while, then you may know about, if you've been around for a long time, then you'll know about their 35mm lens adapters. And that's when I was first introduced to the company. And then they got into the gimbal game actually very, very early on with the Helix. It's a unique product because it is very different in terms of form factor than your traditional gimbal systems from companies like DJI and FreeFly Systems, so the Ronin and the Movi. So the Helix is really interesting. I'll actually be shooting with one at NAB, and I'll have that in my workshops, the Helix Junior actually. But this product here is a brand new product from Lettuce, which is targeting a very different part of the market, the higher end of the market. The complete system is called the Helix remote head system, and it is really, really interesting. I'm going to actually have a vlog going up in the next couple of days about it, so you can see it from different angles and in person. And I was fortunate enough, because they're based out of Portland, to go in. It was just sort of fortuitous timing. The day after they posted this Facebook image. And what this is a, in terms of what we're looking at here, a 3-axis gimbal-based system that can be used on cameras all the way up to things like the Alexa 65. And it's not going to be an inexpensive solution in, you know, in its full form, but it is, at least I'm being told, the only 3-axis gimbal system that will come to market very shortly after NAB, really shortly after NAB, that is capable of doing 360 degrees in all of those axes. So you can, you know, pan, tilt, and roll 360 degrees, complete motion in all of those axes completely without any stuff getting in the way. And I saw it happening, and it was cool. So the Lettuce remote head. This is, again, high-end solution. This is for high-end digital cinema cameras, but they'll have a booth in the central hall, and I think you should check them out. I think that's what we're talking about here. Do we have any other questions that are specific to NAB in terms of crystal balling things, at least stuff that I'm not under embargo about, or that you just have in terms of general questions related to small to no crew production? I'll just wait a minute and see if any other questions come up on the board from the people that are here. And would like to remind everybody to check out newsshooter.com for your NAB news. It's generally where I go to get my news from the crew over there, and they will be running around like crazy at the show to give you coverage of what is happening. So I think it seems like those are our questions. I'm happy to answer more. I hope as we go on that there will be more questions, that people will get more involved in these live streams, and that they will expand in terms of what I can cover. Please remember that I have a website, which is theC47.com. And if you like the content you see here, then please subscribe. Patrick does ask, are we able to buy things from NAB, or it's just for the show? You're welcome, photographer at large. Patrick, I don't know how to answer that question. You can always ask, but the correct answer is you are not supposed to be buying product from manufacturers at the show. But manufacturers do have show specials, and it's up to you whether or not you want to ask whether or not things are for sale. Is that a politically correct way of answering your question? I think it is, kind of. Let's go with that. I will tell you this. You're not going to be able to buy Sony, Panasonic, Canon, Arri, Blackmagic, ATOMOS type products from the show. Let's put it that way. I guess that's it for this week's episode. Thank you for watching. Oh, by the way, not only subscribe and all that good stuff right there, subscribe, but here's the deal. Next week, Thursday, I will not be doing a live stream, and the following Thursday I will not be doing a live stream because I will be at NAB, but I will be shooting content for an episode having to do with products that I find at the show that I think are relevant to small to no crew production. So look out for that afterwards. I will be posting the vlog about the Lettuce remote head before the show, and maybe one other episode related to audio. We'll see how much time I have, which is very, very little at this point in time, getting ready for everything that I have to do at the show. Thanks again, everybody, for watching, and I will see you in 3 weeks for the live stream, but there'll be more content going up before that. So there you have it. Thanks again for watching.